Holy shit, 2017 is already over. That went by way too quick. Seriously, I blinked my eyes and it was 2018. Shit's crazy, man. But with another year being wrapped up, it is time for me to give you guys my list for the top 10 best movies of 2017. This is always my favorite video to do every single year. I absolutely love talking about my 10 favorite movies of the year with you guys. And like last year, I once again dressed to the nine for the occasion. And yes, this is the exact same thing I wore in last year's top 10 best list video. I don't own a lot of nice clothes. But anyways, before I get into my list, gotta go over some things really quick first with you guys. Number one, these are not gonna be spoiler talks for these 10 videos. This is just gonna be my brief thoughts on them, what I loved about them. If you want to see my full spoiler talks on these videos, just go to my channel, search the movie name, you should be able to find it there. The second point I want to make is I did not see every movie that came out in 2017. There were some movies like 3 Billboards on Ebbing, Missouri and The Shape of Water that didn't really get a wide release, weren't really playing anywhere near me, so I couldn't see them. And there were other movies released this year like Get Out and It that kind of just flew under my radar, so I never ended up seeing them either. Although I will say, in the case with those two movies, I didn't see them because I don't watch horror movies because I'm the easiest scare in the world. Believe it or not, I actually gave some consideration, some anyway, to seeing It because everyone around me was raving how great a movie it is. But I just couldn't do it, guys. I like my sleep at night too much. And finally, this is the last point I will make before we get into my list. This is my personal list for what I felt were the 10 best movies of the year. Will these movies be nominated for Oscars? Will they show up on AFI's top 10 best list? Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but that does not matter. These were just movies that I loved for one reason or another. And that also means that my list is going to be very different from your top 10 list. You know why? Because we're all different people. You may agree with some points on my list, you may disagree with my list a little bit, you may disagree with it entirely, and that is perfectly okay. This is just my opinion. Okay, I've made all the points I need to make. Now let's get into the list. Starting off this list at number 10, we have Blade Runner 2049. I kind of had to eeny, meeny, miny between like 3 different movies in deciding what should be number 10 on my list. But after finally watching the original Blade Runner and understanding Blade Runner 2049 even more, Blade Runner 2049, it has to be on here. The acting in this movie was great. I loved Ryan Gosling in the lead role. I loved that Harrison Ford returned as Rick Deckard, but he wasn't shoehorned into the movie. He played a great role for this sequel. Visually, the movie is just beautiful to look at. From a visual effects standpoint, it's probably the best movie of the year. I loved the expanding of this world. I really loved the investigation that went on in this movie with Ryan Gosling. The movie's around 3 hours long, and it definitely felt 3 hours long at times, but it did keep me intrigued. It kept me hooked. It kept me engaged. A Blade Runner sequel just could have set up for an action franchise. In this case, though, it went completely against how that usually goes, and they decided, you know what? We feel there's another story to tell in this Blade Runner universe, so we're gonna make a sequel for it. After finally seeing the original Blade Runner, I can actually say that Blade Runner 2049 is one of those sequels that improves upon the original. It's fair to say, the DC Extended Universe, it's been pretty disappointing to say the least. However, this year, it finally did release us a movie that really was awesome in every sense of the word, and that was Wonder Woman. There is so much to love about this movie. I loved Gal Gadot's portrayal of Wonder Woman. I loved Chris Pine in this movie. I loved Gal Gadot and Chris Pine's chemistry together. I really loved the mythology in this movie and learning about the Amazons, where they come from, what their purpose is. The movie had the perfect setting in World War I, which was great for Wonder Woman's story. I loved seeing her as this fish out of water in the real world. The action in this movie was fun, it was exciting. That scene in No Man's Land seriously gets me on the edge of my seat every time I watch it. I have no idea what the DC Extended Universe really holds for the future, but I am very happy that Wonder Woman turned out to be what it was. You all know I am a huge sucker for comedies. Generally speaking, every year, the movie that makes me laugh the hardest is going to make my top 10 best list. And for me, the funniest and best all-around comedy of the year, that would be The Disaster Artist. James Franco gives by far and away the best performance I've seen of him in quite a while. I loved seeing the Franco brothers finally doing a movie together. The two of them had unbelievable chemistry in this movie. I loved seeing this real-life story being told of these two guys who wanted to make it in Hollywood and no one would give them a chance, so they just took on this project by themselves so they could truly pursue their dreams. The Disaster Artist was hilarious, it was heartwarming, and it actually makes me now want to go watch the horrible, shitty movie that is The Room. This movie deserves to be on this top 10 list for that reason alone. Oh, hi, Mark. Before every year begins, I look ahead to see what's going to be released so I can figure out what I'm going to see. And whenever I see that a movie's being released by Disney and Pixar, I make sure that I keep a spot on my top 10 best list reserved for that. This year they gave us Coco, and it's number 7 on the list. Coco is everything you could want in a Disney Pixar movie. It has awesome characters. It has a great story. It brought us to the land of the dead, which looked so amazing and intriguing and really makes you think. The animation looked beautiful. The music in this movie is fantastic. It teaches great lessons about family and pursuing your dreams. The movie was funny. It definitely had the feels. I'm someone who doesn't really cry in movies, and this movie had me tearing up on more than a few occasions. Best animated movie of the year by a clear mile. A great cast, a killer soundtrack, slick action scenes, and some of the best car chase scenes I have ever seen in a movie. That's right, at number 6, we got Baby Driver. Everyone out there was raving over how great a movie Baby Driver was, and yeah, this movie is really awesome. The cast in this movie worked fantastic. I loved Kevin Spacey, I loved Jon Hamm, I loved Jamie Foxx, I loved Ansel Elgort. Ansel Elgort and Lily James, they had awesome chemistry together. I really bought the romance that they developed in this movie. The writing in this movie was excellent. It's the kind of Edgar Wright screenplay that everyone enjoys with movies. The action in this movie was so well done, so exciting. I loved the car chase scenes. They're some of the most thrilling I've ever seen. The soundtrack in this movie was great. Not just the kind of famous songs that they were using in this movie, but even the moments when Baby's just, mixing people's dialogues to make mixtapes, to make different songs. Those were awesome too. And yeah, I think I speak for everyone when I say that with the addition of this movie, Edgar Wright now has a pretty solid resume going for him at this point. Number 5 is a movie that a lot of people are probably going to be very surprised I don't have much higher on my list, but it has to be on the list for sure, and that is SpiderMan Homecoming. As the die-hard Spider-Man fan that I am, SpiderMan Homecoming was everything I could have asked for in a Spider-Man movie. Tom Holland is easily the best Spider-Man we have ever gotten. Michael Keaton is the best Spider-Man villain we have gotten since Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2. This is the first Spider-Man movie we've gotten that's really focused on Peter Parker's high school life. Seriously, I loved how it wasn't really just a superhero movie, but it was kind of a high school movie at the same time. Seriously, there are times I'm watching this movie and it's the scenes that are focusing on Peter Parker's high school life and his social life, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this feels like a John Hughes movie. This is awesome. I love the humor in this movie. I love the action in this movie. I love that it does tie into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it does stand back on its own as its, Spider-Man standalone movie. I love that they had Tony Stark in this movie, but he wasn't shoehorned into this movie, and he wasn't in this movie for too much of it. But truthfully, what I loved about this movie most is it was a Spider-Man origin story without it being a Spider-Man origin story. In a way, it wasn't an origin of how Peter Parker became Spider-Man. It's an origin to how Peter Parker learned what it truly means to be the superhero that is Spider-Man. In my opinion, this is the best Spider-Man movie we've ever gotten, and it's one of the best movies in the MCU in general. Now we're on to the top 4, and I'm going to tell you, these are the movies that really hit me home. Number 4 is one of the greatest movie theater cinematic experiences I have ever had in my life, and that's Dunkirk. Dunkirk is a movie like nothing I've ever seen or experienced before. A lot of people had issues that this movie didn't really focus so much on the character development, the characters in this movie, what their pasts were, what their stories were. For me though, I love that because it really made the movie feel more real. It really felt more like war. I mean, I've never been in war, but from what I've heard, in war, you don't really get the chance to sit down with your fellow troops, your comrades, really talk about your life. You're under attack. You're avoiding being killed. You're doing killing. Dunkirk did such a great job at telling the story of the events that happened in Dunkirk, how these men were able to survive this crazy situation. The movie does such a great job at sucking you in and making you feel like you are there, like you are a soldier that's taking part in this battle. The action in this movie, it looked real, it sounded real. Hans Zimmer's score in this movie was perfect. Literally, I didn't feel like I could breathe until the movie was over because it was so intense. This is definitely a stray away from what Christopher Nolan has given to us before, but I can say right now this is easily one of his best movies. It's safe to say 2017 was a great year for superhero movies, but the best superhero movie of the year for me had to be Logan. A lot was really riding on this movie, it being the final movie where Hugh Jackman would portray Wolverine, and it paid off big time. This is by far and away the best Hugh Jackman has ever been as Wolverine, aka Logan. It might also be the best that Patrick Stewart has ever been as Charles Xavier. I absolutely loved Daphne Keane as X-23. I really hope we see her again in future X-Men movies. It was the first rated R Wolverine movie we had ever gotten, and it was perfect that it was rated R, because a rated R Wolverine movie was just the best way to tell a Wolverine story. I love the story in this movie. I love seeing the father-daughter relationship that develops between Logan and Laura. The movie has very brutal, bloody, and just graphic violence, but you know it needs to be that way if you're gonna tell a Wolverine story the best way that you can. The movie has a very surprising amount of heart to it. There were moments I was watching this movie and I was straight up choking up. In the end, when I walked out of Logan for the first time, I was thinking to myself, you know, I don't think any of the superhero movies this year are gonna top that. And yeah, none of them could. Logan was incredible. So yeah, per usual, number 1 and number 2 kind of had to flip-flop these movies a couple times. But at number 2, we have the concluding chapter to what is, for me, one of the best movie trilogies ever. And that's War for the Planet of the Apes. After we got Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I was like, there's no way War for the Planet of the Apes can be as good as that. And lo and behold, it was even better. And now we have as a trilogy where each movie only gets better. I will remember Caesar the Ape as one of the greatest movie heroes, movie characters of all time. It's truly amazing seeing how much he has grown over the course of this trilogy. I loved Woody Harrelson in this movie as the villain, as the general. I love seeing his motive to why he's doing what he's doing, because it makes perfect sense, him being a human being, acting out of this fear that these apes are gonna take over the planet. I love that this movie really focused primarily on the ape characters. I loved seeing them continuing to develop Maurice and Rocket. Bad Ape was a great side character that provided really good comic relief. I really loved the human character, Nova. I love how this was the movie that especially ties into the original Planet of the Apes movie. I know some people complained how War for the Planet of the Apes didn't really have a war in it. It was just that really one battle scene, that one or two battle scenes anyway. But that didn't really bother me. For me, the war is seeing, one, the conflict that is going on between the apes and the humans, and the war that Caesar is going through himself. You know, him, going on this pursuit of vengeance and, what he feels is justice, and him being conflicted. In the end, I can now look back on this Planet of the Apes trilogy, and I can say that this is one of those very, very, very rare trilogies that only gets better with each movie. And good news for you, Hollywood. You gave us a great Planet of the Apes trilogy. Now if you want to make Planet of the Apes that are just gonna suck and just make money, you're free to do that now. You gave us what we wanted. So here we are, guys, my number 1, my favorite movie of the year, what I felt was the best movie of 2017. You all can probably guess what it is, and this is what I meant in the beginning of my video when I said that you are going to disagree with my top 10 best list. A few of you may agree with me putting this movie at my number 1. Some of you may disagree with my opinion, but respect it. And a lot of you may actually hate me putting this at my number 1 so much that you'll attack me in the comments section and maybe even unsubscribe. But you know what? This is my top 10 best list, and I would not be staying true to myself if I didn't say Star Wars The Last Jedi was my favorite movie of 2017. Because you know what, guys? It is. I absolutely loved this movie. You all know me. I love Star Wars. I'm a big Star Wars nerd. Star Wars The Last Jedi, it was a movie I was really looking forward to this year. It was my most anticipated movie of this year. A lot of people who saw Star Wars The Last Jedi didn't like it, couldn't get behind it, didn't really feel it was for them. And you know what? That's perfectly okay. I get that. This is a polarizing movie. But for me, this was everything I wanted it to be. After I did my spoiler talk for Star Wars The Last Jedi, and I saw a lot of people's opinions on, why they didn't like The Last Jedi, or why they felt it was just not a good movie at all, I went and saw Star Wars The Last Jedi a second time just to see if my opinions still standed. And I gotta say, guys, I loved it even more the second time I watched it. I will probably see this movie a third time, and you know what? I'll probably love it even more then. Going back briefly to my top 10 best list of 2015, a lot of people were shocked that I had The Force Awakens as my number 4 and not my number 1. And I said, as much as I loved The Force Awakens, I couldn't ignore that it had similarities to A New Hope. I said, going into The Last Jedi, I wanted to get a brand new Star Wars sequel that felt very different, that truly was something we had never experienced before. and Star Wars The Last Jedi was that. I loved Mark Hamill's portrayal of Luke Skywalker in this movie. I loved seeing him as this damaged character who feels the Jedi needs to end, who's hesitant to train Rey, but slowly realizes what he does need to do. Daisy Ridley as Rey and Adam Driver as Kylo Ren, I thought they were even better in this movie. I loved seeing them discovering their destinies in this movie. I loved seeing the connection that they had with each other. The movie gave us a lot more of Poe Dameron. I loved seeing the kind of soldier he is, and I loved seeing the role that he plays in this rebellion. Carrie Fisher was fantastic in her final movie role as Leia. I love continuing to see the character development with Finn and his role in the Resistance. I actually really loved the character Rose. I thought she brought great heart to this movie. I loved seeing her reasoning for fighting. That Canto Bight scene, although maybe not my favorite part in the movie, I love that it showed more of the reason behind her character wanting to fight and seeing the corruption that is in the war in Star Wars. The score, as always, is amazing. The visual effects looked incredible. The action scenes in this movie are some of the best I have ever seen in a Star Wars movie. The movie had a lot of twists and turns that I never saw coming. I thought as I was watching the movie, like, okay, the movie's gonna play out this way, and nope, it played out entirely differently and completely blew my mind and knocked me on my ass. In the end, I wanted The Last Jedi to do what a sequel should do and step it up in every sense of the word, and in my opinion, it did that. And in the end, when I look back on the year 2017, for me, I'm gonna remember the movie of the year as Star Wars The Last Jedi. So there it is, you guys. That is my list for the top 10 best movies of 2017. And of course, not all movies I saw this year were great. There is a worst of the year list coming in a few days, so be on the lookout for that too. But for now, that's all I gotta say. So guys, thank you so much for watching my video. But now it's over to you guys. Don't forget to leave a comment. Let me know what were your favorite movies of 2017. And feel free to leave your thoughts on my list, whether you agree or disagree. I'd love to hear what you guys think. And as always, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I will see you all next time.